If you need everyone else to understand your emotions before you're allowed to trust them, you will spend your whole life abandoning yourself. Hello everyone, welcome back to your regularly scheduled self-reflection. I am Tash and this is Snack-Sized Deep Dives, just a little snackable deep dive into a mental health topic to aid self-reflection, self-compassion, and to improve your mental health. Most people feel as if their feelings are only valid if other people can understand them and understand where they're coming from. We think that we're independent, even the people who are most confident in themselves, but we constantly look around for confirmation. It is a natural human instinct to compare and contrast against other humans because it tells us relatively where we stand, how well we're doing, if we're on the right path. So the second you share your emotions and someone says, oh, that's not a big deal, you're overreacting, you're overthinking that, or you're too sensitive, we panic, even if it's just for a second, because we consider whether they're right. Even if you don't consciously think that you need other people's validation for your emotions, consider how often you're asking yourself, am I overreacting? Am I being dramatic? Maybe I'm the problem. Why doesn't anyone else feel like I do? When people don't understand your reaction to something, you start to question your stability. You assume that if it doesn't make sense to them, it shouldn't make any sense to you. You think that there's something wrong with you for feeling that way because no one else does. But the fact is that emotions are such nuanced, malleable things. This is uncomfortable on purpose, so let's call it like it is. Before we get into the main topic, I'd just like to remind you to follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to or watching this on. Please leave a review if you enjoy this content. If you find my content valuable, I'd love for other people to find it. Thank you so much. So somewhere along your life path, you learned that emotions must be reasonable, they must be proportionate to the situation, they must be approved of in order to be valid, and if they're not, then something bad happens. So now, when you feel something intense, when you feel an intense emotion, you don't just sit with it and accept that that's the way you're feeling. You jump to try and justify it, to defend the way you're feeling, to try and make it palatable and understandable for others. But emotions are not democratic decisions. They're not things to be debated upon. You feel the way that you feel, and that's just a fact. Whether someone else thinks that's justified or not is not relevant. So let's try and understand why it feels so hurtful and threatening for someone else to not understand your emotions. Being misunderstood, it activates something primal within us. Humans are wired to desire belonging for survival, and social rejection hits our nervous system really quick because we feel like that's a threat to our survival. This can hit even harder if you have prior trauma that is unhealed and undealt with, because it can trigger abandonment wounds, it can trigger fawning responses and people-pleasing tendencies. You fear when you're coming across as disagreeable. It can trigger any kind of low self-worth related reaction, right? When someone dismisses or disagrees with your feelings, your body doesn't jump to register the fact that there is a difference in opinion. There are different life experiences that have contributed to the way that different people feel. We don't immediately understand the nuance behind why people have different reactions to things. It takes a second and a discussion to understand where someone else is coming from. You will never understand immediately why someone else feels the way that they do because you haven't lived their life experiences. You don't understand what's contributed to them feeling that way at that point. Not fully, anyway. It's especially harder to understand where other people are coming from when you're emotionally invested in your side of things. And being emotional, having heightened emotions, reduces the logical reasoning in your brain, right? We can't logically understand in the moment why someone disagrees with us. So instead of registering all these logical arguments, understanding that emotions have nuance, people understand things differently and therefore feel differently about things, we register someone's dismissal, someone's misunderstanding as a loss of connection, and you therefore become scared of rejection and abandonment. This can trigger you to jump to over explaining your emotions. You begin to downplay how you are feeling in order to make it palatable and understandable to other people, or you laugh it off and pretend that you didn't actually feel that way. Our nervous systems are always craving safety, and so we always try and balance how we're perceived on the outside in order to balance on the inside if we're scared of abandonment and rejection, right? The nervous system is craving the relief from the uncomfortability of someone disagreeing with us, of someone dismissing us. But real safety doesn't come from agreement. It doesn't come from being palatable to other people. It may feel like that in the moment because your nervous system and your fear of being rejected is lulled in that moment. But as time passes, you're just abandoning yourself. You're just cutting down how you really feel and suppressing it in order to please other people. Real safety comes in self-trust. It comes in staying loyal to yourself. You should never rely on external validation for internal safety. It is so fragile and fickle and can change at any moment. So let's get on to the childhood wounds and how they can contribute to needing people to understand your emotions. You will be especially prone to seeking emotional validation from others if, as a child, you experienced inconsistent emotional mirroring. If caregivers sometimes responded to you warmly and sometimes responded coldly, if they were emotionally unpredictable, if they were stressed, distracted, or emotionally unavailable, the child learns that they have to monitor their caregivers in order to be safe. They suss how their caregivers are feeling in order to learn how to act and how to react to things to be accepted. This creates a hyper awareness and hyper vigilance of other people's reactions. As adults, that becomes scanning for validation. Other childhood wounds, such as conditional love, if your caregiver's love for you depended on you being easygoing, palatable, not having big emotions that they had to deal with. It depended on you being emotionally regulated as a child to be accepted by them. And also if there was a lot of emotional dismissal in the home, if your emotions were never validated, if your feelings were minimized, dismissed, or mocked and made fun of, this would most likely contribute to you feeling like your emotions weren't to be trusted unless someone else confirms them. You were taught that your feelings had to be palatable and understandable to other people and validated by other people in order for them to be worthy addressing. This is so horrible and confusing as a child and then therefore as an adult, because you begin to have this cognitive dissonance between how you actually feel and what your instincts are telling you to feel versus how you're forcing yourself to feel in order to be understandable to other people. And if you're constantly gaslighting yourself over time to act a certain way in order to be understandable to other people, and you engage in that constant self-abandonment, your self-trust is just completely non-existent, and your whole existence and personality and the way you act and what you tolerate all becomes dependent on what other people think. Your emotions and how you feel and your wounds are not relevant and are never dealt with, and that can cause a lot of turmoil inside and a lot of self-hate and self-shame. The amount of times I have minimized my own emotions in order to make someone else feel comfortable is actually embarrassing, or to fit a mold of how they think I should be reacting to something in order to keep the peace or not cause problems and conflict. Just over a year ago, I stopped doing that. It is a people-pleasing technique and it is so harmful to your psyche. Every time you do this, you chip away at your self-trust. You teach yourself every single time you do this that you can't rely on your own emotions and your own instincts, until eventually one day you'll realize that you only look to other people to know how you feel. The brutal truth is that not everyone has the range to understand you. Some people haven't done enough work in order to be able to tolerate emotional depth and nuance. A lot of people don't know how to sit in discomfort or admit that they caused you harm. If people can't intellectualize and discuss the nuance of situations, intense situations and emotional ones, they're most likely going to be dismissing emotions, their own and yours. If someone avoids their own emotions, they will avoid yours. If someone benefits from minimizing your emotions, they will call you dramatic, they will shut you down. It has absolutely nothing to do with whether your emotions are valid or not. When people don't understand the fact that emotions have nuance and other people have different understandings of the same situation, they will only project what they understand onto you. This is why you can't rely on other people to dictate how you feel, because people only project what they know. If they're dismissing your feelings and not trying to understand how you feel about the situation and instead trying to push onto you how they feel, they don't have the emotional skills to understand that emotions have nuance. You need to rely on your own emotions and your own instincts because they reflect what you have been through and therefore will lead to actions and understandings and the place in the world that reflect who you are and what you want instead of what other people think and feel and do. You have to learn to trust yourself. That being said, it is important to understand other people's perspectives. In fact, it's extremely valuable to learn to understand where other people are coming from and to have these nuanced discussions about emotions, but never take on other people's perspectives as your own. Your reaction doesn't have to be logical to be real and valid. Two people can experience the exact same situation. One will shrug it off and the other person will spiral. That doesn't mean that someone is wrong or someone is irrational. It means that those two people's histories, experiences, and perspectives and understanding of the world are different. If you grew up being dismissed, dismissal will hit hard. If you grew up around unpredictability, inconsistency will trigger you. Your emotional response to things is informed by your story. It doesn't need to make sense to somebody else with a different one. A lot of people who feel like they need to be validated in their emotions have a pattern of over-explaining. Notice how often you jump to over-explain how you feel without being asked in order to try and justify it, or how often you reference past events in order to make people understand where you're coming from. And I do this all the time, but saying, I know this is silly, but before explaining how you feel. This is a technique to help dumb down your emotions or make it feel like it's not that serious in case someone reacts to you as if you're irrational. This is just you pre-rejecting yourself. You're trying to make your emotions acceptable before someone else has the opportunity to reject them. This is self-abandonment. When I first started backing myself up and learning self-trust and learning to trust my own instincts, I started giving opinions and staying strong in how I felt. I started saying things like, you don't have to agree with me. I'm not debating my experiences. This is how I feel. Even when met with disagreement and resistance, it was so uncomfortable at first. You have that deep desire to want to be accepted still. There was a fear of being judged and uncomfortable silences. It makes you want to go back on it and soften it and be agreeable again. But there is so much strength in not chasing approval, not trying to convince anyone that you're rational or right or understandable. This is emotional maturity and the right people will respect it. You cannot control how you're perceived by other people. This is one of life's biggest lessons, in my opinion. There is such a huge issue with worrying how you're perceived and worrying what other people think of you, and it stops you from living your life authentically. If someone wants to see you in a certain light, as dramatic, as too sensitive, as irrational, they will. You can over-explain it, you can shrink yourself, you can intellectualize your feelings and explain it as much as you want, but they still might not understand it. So the question then becomes, are you actually trying to be understood, or are you just trying to not be disliked? Those are not the same thing, and I personally struggle with this. Every single person in one way or another struggles with worrying what other people think, and therefore driving themselves to try and be perceived in the way that they want to be perceived. You cannot control what other people think, and there is absolutely no point in trying. You're just making yourself suffer. For what? However, this is not an excuse to avoid accountability or to refuse reflection and weaponize your emotions. Sometimes you're reacting from old wounds, sometimes you're projecting, sometimes you need to regulate before you respond, sometimes you act on your emotions when you shouldn't. But this insight and distinction and understanding should come from personal self-reflection, not from panic because someone didn't validate you. You need to understand yourself here. So how do you begin controlling the urge to be validated? First of all, you need to separate need from dependency. A healthy feeling in this context is it feels good when someone understands me, versus an unhealthy feeling, which is if they don't validate me, I feel worthless. When you feel the urge, pause and ask yourself, am I seeking connection with this person, or am I trying to regulate my self-esteem through them? If they don't validate me right now, what will this trigger in me? Secondly, you need to acknowledge the self-worth meter. Many people subconsciously use others as a self-worth meter. For example, if someone replies to you quickly, that means you matter. If someone seems distracted and doesn't want to talk to you in that moment, then you're not important. Or if someone disagrees with you, then you're wrong or you're flawed in some way. Start noticing when your mood shifts depending upon someone else's reaction to you. Thirdly, you need to build internal validation. When you feel that urge to seek reassurance from someone else, turn it inwards. Name the feeling. Is it feeling insecure? Is it anxiety? Is it feeling unseen or misunderstood? Then you need to validate yourself plainly and simply, saying things like, it makes sense that I feel this way because this situation matters to me. Then you need to start shifting your perspective. Someone else's reaction to this doesn't define my value because they haven't lived my life. This might feel awkward at first, especially if you're talking to yourself, if you don't usually do that and validate yourself and being nice to yourself. That may feel off if you've lived your life not doing that before, but that's fine. You're building a new neural pathway. You're trying to begin understanding yourself more. Eventually, automatically validating yourself will become normal. The fourth point is to delay your reassurance behaviors. If that's double texting somebody, explaining yourself excessively, fishing for compliments, or oversharing in order to get sympathy, acknowledge what it is you're desiring to do and just take a minute. Take 10 minutes, go for a walk, write it down, journal it. Ask yourself what you want them to say. What is that behavior hoping to get out of that other person to validate you? Ask yourself what you're hoping that will fix for you and learn how to fix that yourself. You need to heal the root of this and not just the behavior. You're not broken or wrong for wanting validation from other people. It is a natural human instinct. You want it because at one point in your life you were left feeling worthless. And so you now need that tangible evidence that you're not. You don't need to psychoanalyze yourself endlessly, but learning the root cause of this behavior will be valuable. Ask yourself, when did you learn that you had to earn being seen and being understood? Another powerful technique is to shift your perspective from, do they approve of me, to, do I respect myself? Instead of, did I say the right thing? Ask yourself, was I honest? Was I kind? Was I aligned with my values here? Self-respect is way more stabilizing than external validation once you've learned to trust yourself. Your emotions don't need a consensus. Your emotions need awareness. You're allowed to feel hurt. You're allowed to feel angry. You're allowed to feel whatever emotion you feel. It's always valid. Even if no one else would, it is valid because you feel it. It's the behavior following that emotion that needs to be regulated. Being misunderstood by others is uncomfortable, but constantly trying to earn understanding from people is exhausting. Thank you so much for listening to Snack Size Deep Dive at 12. I hope to see you on Monday for my episode about Self-abandonment, that should be a powerful one, especially after this episode. If this felt uncomfortable, that means something clicked. Sit with it. I'll see you again. Bye.